She showed up with balloons, folding chairs, and a line of cars stretching down the gravel road. Karen marched right up to my gate, waving a clipboard like she was hosting some grand event. "Step aside," she barked. "I booked this lake house for 80 guests. They'll be here any minute." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "Booked it? With who?" She flashed a printed sheet of paper with my property address typed in bold. "See? Confirmation. The HOA approved it." I almost laughed. "Karen, there is no HOA here, and you didn't book anything. This is my family's lake house. My grandfather built it with his own hands." Her face hardened. "Don't play dumb. The community has rights to this property. I'm hosting my niece's wedding here, and you're not going to ruin it." Behind her, a caravan of guests started spilling out of their cars, carrying coolers, speakers, even a dance floor kit. They looked around, confused, whispering. That's when I pulled the thick chain through the gate and snapped the padlock shut. The loud clink echoed across the driveway. Karen's jaw dropped. "You can't do that," she shrieked, rattling the chain. "They're on their way. We have catering trucks coming." I leaned on the fence post, calm as stone. "Then I hope you booked them somewhere else, because nobody's stepping foot on this property without my say-so." Her face went red, then purple. She stomped, screamed, and spun around to her crowd. "He's lying. He doesn't own this. Call the HOA." Phones came out, people recording, whispering. Karen's grand wedding takeover was starting to look more like a circus. And the best part? She had no idea I had the original deed tucked in my back pocket, signed, sealed, and ready to end this charade. Karen wasn't ready for the looks she was getting. Guests shifted uncomfortably, murmurs spreading like wildfire. A woman in a pale dress, probably the bride, whispered, "Aunt Karen, did you even rent this place?" The question hit like a dart. Karen's smile twitched, but she tried to recover, throwing her arms wide. "Of course I did. Don't listen to him. He's just some squatter trying to keep us out." She pointed at me, desperate to steer the crowd. "I have the confirmation right here." She held up her paper again, waving it like a flag. I stepped closer, calm but loud enough for everyone to hear. "That's not a booking form. That's a printout of my Zillow listing from 3 years ago. You didn't rent anything." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones tilted toward Karen, recording her every flinch. The bride's face flushed with anger. "You mean you lied? You dragged 80 people here? For nothing?" Karen's mask cracked. No, the HOA promised me this." That was her fatal mistake. A man in the back shouted, "There is no HOA. We've been telling you that for years." More voices chimed in, laughter mixing with outrage. Karen spun in circles, pointing at neighbors like they had betrayed her. "You're all against me. You'll see, he doesn't even own this place." That's when I finally pulled out the folded document from my pocket. The original deed, sealed by the county, my grandfather's name inked across it. I unfolded it slow, letting the crowd catch every move. This is my family's land. Always has been, always will be. And right now, you're trespassing. Karen's lips trembled. Her grand wedding takeover had turned into a public humiliation. But I knew Karen. She wasn't done. Not yet. Karen's desperation exploded. She stomped to the gate, rattling the heavy chain like a child throwing a tantrum. "You can't lock us out. We have guests waiting. We have food coming. And this is our community space." Her shrill voice cracked, but she didn't stop. A catering van pulled up behind the crowd, the driver leaning out his window. "Where's the entrance? We've got trays of food here." Karen spun around like she'd been given new ammo. "See, they came for us. You have no right to stop a wedding." I stayed calm, folding the deed back into my pocket. "Karen, this isn't a community space. This isn't your backyard. This is private property. And if you break that lock, you'll be arrested for trespassing and destruction of property." She froze for a second, then her eyes lit up with a dangerous idea. She pointed to a group of men in suits, wedding guests probably, cousins. "Don't just stand there. Help me move this chain. We'll push the gate open together." The men looked at each other, uneasy. One of them muttered, "Karen, maybe we should just talk to the owner?" She snapped at him. "I am the HOA president. I don't need permission." That was it. The crowd erupted in murmurs, some laughing, some furious. The bride buried her face in her hands, humiliated. A young kid held up his phone, recording everything, and said loud enough for half the group to hear, "This is going straight to TikTok." Karen's face twisted, red with rage and panic. She grabbed the chain again and yanked so hard her nails scraped against the steel. The sound screeched through the air. "I'll sue you. You'll regret this." But she didn't know. I had already set up a security camera that was catching every second of her meltdown in perfect HD.
Karen's screeching was loud enough to carry across the lake. Guests were whispering, the bride was near tears, and the caterer just shook his head, refusing to unload a single tray. That's when Karen pulled her phone out again and dialed 911, pacing in circles like she was the victim of some crime. "Yes, officer, we need immediate help," she cried dramatically. "This man has locked us out of community property, he's threatening my family, and he's blocking a wedding." Her voice cracked at just the right places, fake sobs dripping with entitlement. People around her looked shocked. One man whispered, "She's lying to the cops." Another muttered, "She's going to get herself arrested." Phones tilted higher. Half the guests were now live streaming. I stood calm at the gate, arms crossed, letting her dig her own hole. I'd seen this play before. Karen always thought she could spin her way out with theatrics, but today, she was up against hard evidence. 10 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser rolled down the gravel road, lights flashing. Karen instantly turned on the waterworks, rushing forward with her clipboard like it was proof of the apocalypse. "Officer, thank God you're here. Arrest him. He's stolen community property and trapped 80 guests outside their own venue." The deputy stepped out, but before he could even respond, a second cruiser pulled up, this one with Sheriff Daniels behind the wheel. My chest eased. Daniels had been my grandfather's closest friend. He knew exactly who this land belonged to. Karen, of course, didn't notice. She pointed at me, shrieking, "That man is a squatter! He's violent and refusing to leave!" Daniel's expression was stone as he looked from her to me. Then he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Karen, I signed the deed that put this property in your name. You're trespassing, and you just made a false police report." The crowd gasped, cameras zoomed in, and for the first time all day, Karen went completely silent. Karen's silence lasted all of 3 seconds before she snapped. "No, you're wrong. This land is community property. You can't just take his side because you're friends with him." She was trembling, voice cracking, but her pride wouldn't let her stop. Sheriff Daniels didn't flinch. "Karen, you've been warned before about fake HOA rules, and now you've dragged 80 people here under false pretenses. That's fraud." The bride finally exploded. "Fraud?" She stormed toward Karen, her dress dragging in the gravel. "You told me this was booked. You made me cancel another venue. You ruined my wedding day." Tears streamed down her face as she shoved the useless clipboard back at Karen's chest. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" The guests turned too, their whispers now angry shouts. "She lied to us. We drove 3 hours for this? Unbelievable." Someone tossed a balloon at her feet, and another man pulled the catering van into reverse, shaking his head in disgust. Karen's perfect event was collapsing around her, and the cameras were eating it up. She spun in circles, screaming, "Stop filming me! This is harassment! You can't do this to me!" Daniels finally signaled to his deputy, "Cuff her." The sound of handcuffs clicking shut was like thunder. The crowd gasped, then erupted, half in cheers, half in stunned silence. Karen kicked and yelled, "You'll all regret this! I am the HOA! You can't arrest me!" But Daniels only said, "Karen, there is no HOA." And even if there was, you'd never be in charge. The bride's father stepped forward, shaking my hand with both of his hands. Son, thank you for stopping this circus. She's been terrorizing this community for years. I just nodded, my eyes still on Karen as she was pushed into the cruiser, her empire of lies finally crumbling. As the sheriff's cruiser rolled away with Karen screaming in the back seat, the crowd began to scatter, some shaking their heads, others laughing nervously at the chaos they'd just witnessed. The bride sat on a cooler, dress bunched up, trying not to cry. Her father hovered nearby, fuming. I could have walked away right then. I could have let the night end with Karen's humiliation. But there was one last card to play, and it was sitting in my glove box. I pulled out a folded packet and walked over to the bride and her family. I know today was supposed to be your wedding day, and Karen, well, she stole that from you. But my grandfather didn't just leave me this lake house. He left me permission to open it up for events, on my terms. The bride blinked, lifting her head. You mean... I nodded and handed her the packet. Inside was my family's permit for private gatherings. This land is mine, but if you still want to celebrate here tonight, the gates are open. No HOA, no fake rules. Just family. The bride gasped, covering her mouth, and her father's eyes welled up. You'd really let us after all this? I said, Karen doesn't get the last word here. You do. The guests erupted in cheers. Caterers rolled back in. Music started blasting, and the lake house came alive like my grandfather would have wanted, filled with laughter, lights, and love. And as I stood by the porch, watching them dance under the string lights, I thought to myself, she tried to steal my land, my rights, and even this moment. But in the end, all she did was chain herself.